Didn't they do security for Eminem a little bit when M used to come out to the West Coast? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Did you catch this? 100% Samoan. Lift up your shirt, bro. Lift up your shirt. Lift up your shirt. Show your tap. Look at that. Samoan.
Yeah, I'm like,
But when
I'm
you,
Samoan, man. I don't give a.
Booya Tribe didn't talk tough. They meant it. They were sons of Samoan gangbangers, and when Eminem touched down in LA, they were already backing him without question.
Aren't they like the first or the biggest Samoan rap crew all time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Eminem was from Detroit. No gang, no check-in, but he had Dr. Dre behind him, 50 Cent next to him, and numbers that couldn't be ignored. That's when the Crips tried him.
So Eminem was getting extorted by some Crips.
Meaning that they're saying you can't come out here unless you pay us, or...
Yeah, maybe like he was paying them money and just like getting bullied.
He refused. No payment, no apology. That's when Booya and their gang stepped in with a warning of their own.
What kind of weapons do the gangs use? Your gang, for example.
38, 22, 357, 9, AK.
It's pretty heavy sort of artillery.
Suge Knight tried it too. Surrounded M's trailers, sent Bloods to intimidate him. It didn't work.
What's up?
Suge Knight's scared of you. Suge Knight's scared of you.
Because Suge knew what was coming if he pushed too far.
I won't hesitate to shoot anyone.
You won't?
No, I wouldn't hesitate to shoot anyone if they come and mess with me.
Care you King Kong, you Godzilla, you gonna
This is the real reason Crips and Bloods could never touch Eminem. But that protection didn't come out of nowhere. Eminem earned it. And before Booya Tribe ever stepped in, the situation was already hot. He wasn't just some rising artist trying to build buzz. By the early 2000s, Eminem was a problem. He'd outsold almost everyone. He was backed by Dr. Dre, produced by Aftermath, co-signed by 50 Cent, and had an image the industry didn't know what to do with. He wasn't gangsta. He wasn't political. He was just raw, loud, and untouchable on the mic. But while that may have earned him awards and headlines, it didn't mean anything in the streets of Los Angeles. Because in LA, all that fame doesn't matter if you didn't check in. That's the rule that's run the city for decades. If you're not local, if you're not affiliated, and especially if you're walking around with money and cameras, you check in, you show respect, you make calls, or you risk getting pressed, or worse. And this wasn't just a casual expectation. The check-in culture in LA has roots in real-life extortion and gang control. Rappers have been run up on for skipping it. Events have been shot up over it. It's not just about manners, it's about permission. If you're in a neighborhood run by Crips, Bloods, Hoovers, or even independent crews, you better have someone vouching for you. And Eminem, he had no set. He wasn't born on the West Coast. He wasn't affiliated with the Crips, the Pirates, or the Bounty Hunters. He was white. He was out of town. He was loud. He was rich. And worst of all, he wasn't scared. So when he started moving around LA for shows, videos, and Aftermath sessions, the Crips noticed.
So Eminem was getting extorted by some Crips.
Meaning that they're saying you can't come out here unless you pay us, or...
Yeah, maybe like he was paying them money and just like getting bullied.
They didn't try to jump him in the club. They didn't pull a stunt in public. They did it the way LA politics usually works, behind the scenes. A demand for respect, a push for money, street tax. One of the local Crip sets made it clear. Eminem wasn't going to move around their territory for free. Some say they approached his manager, Paul Rosenberg. Others say they made the message clear to people in Dre's circle. Either way, the word was out. Eminem was being tested. And it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was real pressure. This was LA. The same city where Biggie got gunned down in '97 for reasons we still debate. Where Suge Knight ran artists into silence. Where checking in wasn't optional. It was life insurance.
Paul Rosenberg, yeah, he reached out. That's how that song, Hip Hop is in the State of 911 with Booya Tribe and Be Real. That's how that song came about.
Eminem could have folded, could have played it safe, could have paid off the situation quietly, like some artists still do today, but he didn't. He said no. And that decision, that refusal to check in, was a major risk. This was an era where rappers were getting robbed at award shows, stripped at gas stations, jumped at studios. Even street-certified rappers were laying low in LA. So for Eminem, an unprotected white artist with no gang backing, to say no to a Crip extortion, that was almost a death sentence. But Eminem didn't move blind. He knew he couldn't walk around alone forever. And that's when a call got made, and then Booya Tribe came into the picture.
Aren't they like the first or the biggest Samoan rap crew all time?
Yeah.
Didn't they do security for Eminem a little bit when M used to come out to the West Coast? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, if you're just thinking they were a Samoan rap group, you're missing the whole point. These weren't regular musicians. These were real street-connected Samoans with long-standing ties to one of the most feared and violent crews in the region, the Sons of Samoa. We'll break them down later in the video, but here's what you need to know right now. When Booya got involved, the Crips backed off because the Sons of Samoa weren't loud. They weren't flashy, they just pulled up when it mattered. And people got hurt if they had to. So when word got out that Eminem had them behind him, the check-in conversation stopped. No more threats, no more calls, no more moves. And just like that, Eminem went from being seen as easy prey to being someone nobody wanted smoke with. Not because he was a gangster, not because he had a label behind him, but because his protection came with ties that even the Crips didn't want to test. When the Crips pulled back, people close to the streets started asking questions. There hadn't been a payout, no public apology, no protection from known sets, and yet Eminem was suddenly moving in and out of LA untouched. That silence didn't come from coincidence. It came from a name whispered behind the scenes: Booya Tribe. The 6 brothers behind the group, Godfather, Gangsta Rid, Cobra, Monsta O, Murder One, and Gotti, were already known in LA long before they touched a mic. They came out of Carson, a working-class suburb surrounded by gang territories. Growing up, they weren't affiliated with Bloods or Crips. They were part of something else entirely. They were raised inside the structure of the Sons of Samoa, a violent, loosely organized Samoan street collective. SOS wasn't built on color codes or block wars. It was built on identity. Samoan youth who got pressed by local sets banded together not to dominate territory but to defend each other without hesitation. If one was targeted, retaliation was automatic. No warnings, no negotiations. That's what shaped Booya Tribe. Their loyalty didn't come from business. It came from family. And that loyalty was feared.
Some gangsters coming this Saturday, man.
What?
By the time Eminem entered the picture, Booya's reputation was already sealed. They weren't rap industry muscle. They were the type of men who knew how to clear a room without pulling a camera. Their size, history, and street credibility made them a presence no one wanted to test. And in that moment, Eminem needed people like that around him. Booya didn't show up with a public campaign. They didn't post up in music videos or throw gang signs for promo. But once they got involved, the message was felt. Crips stopped making demands. There were no more attempts to press Eminem for checking in. The situation shut down, and fast. That shift wasn't just visible in the streets, it showed up in the music. In 2003, Booya Tribe dropped the single 911, featuring DJ Muggs, Be Real, and Eminem. It wasn't a typical feature, it was a declaration. Eminem didn't just rap about danger, he addressed who was riding with him if things got real.
DJ Muggs, Soul Assassins, Cypress Hill, everybody!
The line, 40-50 Samoans, wasn't just a bar. It was him telling the industry in the streets, I'm not unprotected anymore. Say what you want, but know what comes with it. The connection ran deeper than rap. Booya's protection wasn't symbolic. It came from a network tied to the Sons of Samoa, who had active members from Long Beach to San Jose, many of whom weren't entertainers at all. They were bouncers, security contractors, street enforcers, operating under the same code. Back your own and do it hard. Their method wasn't hype, it was enforcement. And that's what kept Eminem moving untouched through LA, even at events where other rappers were still getting pressed.
Did you catch this? 100%. Samoan. Lift up the shirt, bro. Lift up your shirt. Lift up your shirt. Show your tat. Look at that. Samoan.
Booya didn't bluff. If a threat surfaced, they responded. If a disrespect happened, they remembered. Their protection didn't come with waivers. It came with consequences. That's why the streets stepped back. Not because they were scared of Eminem, but because they knew exactly what would follow if they touched him. And that shift didn't go unnoticed. Suge Knight, who built his name off intimidation, wanted to see if the Booya rumors were real. He didn't send a message. He showed up. Suge Knight wasn't the type to fall back. And with his reputation already cemented in LA as a man who ruled through fear, intimidation, and raw power, he wasn't about to let Eminem waltz through his city without testing him, especially since Eminem had inherited something Suge never forgot: Dr. Dre's loyalty. Back in the mid-90s, Dre had walked away from Death Row Records, leaving behind everything he built with Suge. To Suge, that wasn't just a business move, it was betrayal. Dre didn't just leave, he took his genius with him. And years later, when he gave Eminem the same platform he once gave Snoop and Pac, it hit a nerve. So in Suge's eyes, Eminem was part of the problem. He was the new face of an empire Suge used to run, and that made him a target. Suge pulled the one move he was famous for: showing up unannounced. It started during the filming of 50 Cent's In Day Club music video. This was a big-budget shoot, high profile, nothing low-key about it. Dre was there, M was there, 50 was just blowing up. Everything was moving smooth until chaos hit.
Everybody's running, is coming! Suge came, he had some Mexican. Now we from New York. You ain't never seen with a tattoo on his forehead. 118th Street crew. I'm like, what the f? This the about Suge. He liked the cigar and he trying to what you gonna do.
That's not exaggeration. That's how Suge moved. He came with 30 deep. No warning, no words, just presence. It was his signature tactic. Create fear, force you to react. But what did Eminem do? He stood there, didn't run, didn't hide, didn't call the police or jump in a van. He stayed.
Eminem came outside 100%. Wow. Oh, what did I miss?
Okay.
And Eminem was like, yo, I don't give a man.
Think about that. This wasn't a rap battle. This was one of the most feared men in hip-hop, pulling up with gang muscle, expecting Eminem to fold. And he didn't, but that wasn't the only time Suge tried it. Months later, at the 2001 Source Awards, Suge made another move. This one even more calculated. The Source Awards were infamous. Fights broke out. Rival crews clashed. It wasn't just a ceremony. It was a power check. And Suge planned ahead. He didn't just pull up. He had people planted. Eminem's former bodyguard, Big Naz, broke the silence years later.
And M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, something ain't right. He said, death row, this death row about, this death row life. I was like, death row, what does it got to do with him? He said, hey man, Suge sending a message.
That wasn't coincidence. The Source Awards were known for chaos, but this was targeted. Suge allegedly had bodyguards and artists separated on purpose, creating gaps in security. And that's when Blood affiliates made their move. Big Naz had to snatch Eminem out before things spiraled, but it didn't end there. Later that year, Suge made his boldest move yet. He flew over 50 men from LA to Hawaii, just to crash a private gathering where Eminem, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre were staying. It was supposed to be a vacation, a peaceful weekend. Instead, it turned into a lockdown operation.
We thought it was going to be a vacation, but it ended up turning into a problem. Plane landed in Honolulu, the doors open, and we're met by Honolulu finest and by 20 cops. We ended up getting escorted by Honolulu policemen, and we had to gather up our kids, our wives, and had to be rushed to the transport van.
Let that sink in. An entire police detail had to shadow Eminem because of one man's reach. Suge didn't just want to send a message. He wanted to remind everyone. He still ran LA, but even after all that, he never touched Eminem. Why? Because Suge knew what was waiting on the other side if he did. Reggie Wright Jr., a former Death Row insider, confirmed what most were scared to admit publicly.
Suge had that running with him at the video shoot. There's a guy named Pooh Ryder. He had him about to do something bad to him at the Source Award. And you know what Suge did tell him? No, I don't even never want to hear anything about that. Suge always liked him.
Translation: Suge didn't want war with Samoans. He could intimidate East Coast rappers. He could extort execs. He could pressure artists with no street backing. But Booya Tribe, the Sons of Samoa, that was a fight he couldn't win. And by the time Eminem had faced Suge 3 separate times and never flinched, the message was clear. He was off limits, and Suge Knight knew it. Crips and Bloods ran deep. Their alliances were structured. Their turf wars followed patterns. But the Sons of Samoa were something else entirely. They didn't run blocks. They didn't rep colors. They were a street collective made up of kids who were outnumbered, but refused to be outmatched. They weren't the biggest gang in California, but they were one of the most volatile and the least predictable.
What kind of weapons do the gangs use? Your gang, for example.
38, 22, 357, 9, AK.
It's pretty heavy sort of artillery.
That was from a Long Beach police report, not a rap lyric. And it reflected what the Sons of Samoa were carrying while moving through neighborhoods from Carson to Hayward. But guns weren't what made them feared. It was the fact that you never saw them coming. They didn't advertise their crew. They didn't wave bandanas. They didn't perform gang rituals in public. There was no jump-in, no leadership structure, no neighborhood flags. You didn't join SOS to gain clout. You joined because you were Samoan and had no choice.
Did you catch this? 100%. Samoan. Lift up your shirt, bro. Lift up your shirt. Lift up your shirt. Show your tat. Look at that. Samoan.
And because there were no rules, there were no limits. Most gangs moved in a cycle: threat, retaliation, standoff, de-escalation. But with SOS, it could go from nothing to fatal in seconds. Even the police couldn't predict them. Their danger wasn't in size, it was in response time. They weren't trying to dominate a city. They were trying to make sure no one touched one of theirs without a consequence. And if that sounds like just street lore, look at the case of Nolan Pintuan. He wasn't a gang member, he wasn't in a set. He was a 25-year-old man planning his wedding. But one night in Hayward, California, he crossed paths with 4 SOS members in a stolen van. They didn't rob him. They didn't even talk to him. They just shot him. That wasn't about gang beef. That wasn't retaliation. It was cold, random, final. The aftermath? The shooters didn't even try to clean it up. One left the murder weapon out in the open. They kept the victim's blood-soaked clothing like it didn't matter. To law enforcement, that level of detachment was a red flag. To the streets, it was confirmation. The Sons of Samoa weren't posturing. They were built different.
I won't hesitate to shoot anyone.
You won't?
No, I wouldn't hesitate to shoot anyone if they come and mess with me.
That's what Suge Knight understood. He wasn't afraid of a crew with rules. He was afraid of a crew with none. Because with SOS, the one thing you couldn't do was guess their next move. And once Suge Knight backed down, not once, but 3 separate times, the word was out. Nobody had to guess. Nobody had to ask. Eminem was now off limits, and it wasn't because of fame. It wasn't because he played tough in interviews. It was because every major player who tried to press him, Crips, Bloods, even Suge, walked away without taking it further. Not because they lost interest, because they understood the cost.
What's up?
Suge Knight scared of you. Suge Knight scared of you.
Everyone I talk to, they, man, is Suge really this, really that? I was like,
But when
I'm Samoan, man. I don't give a I don't care. You King Kong, you Godzilla, you gonna get the beat.
Behind Eminem wasn't a security team. It was a wall of street-backed silence. And the deeper you looked, the more serious it got. So by the time Eminem, Dre, and 50 Cent were running the charts, those who once expected a check-in from outsiders were now checking themselves before even speaking on M. Nobody wanted to test the line again. And that shift in energy, it did something to Eminem too. He stopped playing defense. He started pushing back. Behind closed doors, he was recording tracks that name names. Some never made it to shelves, but the ones that leaked, like the unreleased track Smack You, showed just how far things had gone.
Responsible for the deaths of the 2 greatest rappers to ever grace the face of this planet.
He didn't just diss Suge. He called him out for the murders of Tupac and Biggie. No one had done that and walked away untouched. Until now. The industry expected retaliation, but it never came. Because by that point, it couldn't. The rules had changed. Even Reggie Wright Jr., former head of Death Row Security, had to admit it years later.
Suge had that running with him at the video shoot. There's a guy named Pooh Ryder. He had him about to do something bad to him at the Source Award. And you know what Suge did tell me? No, I don't even never want to hear anything about that.
They had him. They wanted to do something, but they didn't. Because even Suge's circle knew what came next if they did. By now, Eminem wasn't just surviving LA. He was moving through it untouched because of who had his back. Suge didn't touch him. Crips didn't extort him. Bloods didn't retaliate, not because they forgot, but because they knew better. That's what made Eminem untouchable. Not the fame, not the record sales, but the silent green light from the most unpredictable crew in the game. And he didn't have to post it. didn't have to scream it, didn't have to act gangster. He just moved smart and let the streets do the talking for him. That's why nobody ran up again. That's why the Crips fell back. That's why the Bloods stayed silent. And that's why Suge Knight, who made entire labels crumble, never touched Eminem. So when people say Eminem ain't got street credit, remind them of this story. Remind them of Booya Tribe, remind them of the Samoans, and remind them how even the most feared men in the industry stood down. Anyway, that's the video, folks. Bye.